Justin Atkins here, Bassmaster Elite Series Pro, and today I want to talk to you about a few baits that I'm going to use to capitalize with forward-facing sonar. Fishing, obviously has been around for a really long time, but through the years, technology has advanced. Started out with 2D sonar, and then we got into mapping, which turned into down imaging, side imaging, and now we have forward-facing sonar. And really what the differences are going to be is with side imaging, you're seeing a picture of things that are in the past. And somebody way smarter than myself come up with the idea that if they could take traditional 2D sonar that has always been going from the boat to the bottom and back and turn that picture out, you could have a live image of what is going on around the boat. It's very controversial. Some people love it, some people not so much. I really am on the side of, I think it's really awesome. It allows you to be very efficient. As a tournament angler, it allows me to break down water really fast. But as somebody, if you have somebody that doesn't get to go all the time, you're Monday through Friday, he's gonna get one day on the lake. It allows him to be able to really break down water fast, see if he's fishing around an area that has fish in it. Just all the things. It's an awesome piece of technology, and I feel like there's really a very limited amount of baits that you have to be successful with it. So I'm going to start through the seasons and just talk about what baits I would use and how I would approach it. First off, the lakes that it's going to be really beneficial on is going to be a deep, clear reservoir style lake. When you fish shallow rivers, things like that, the fish really hold too tight to cover and they live so shallow that they're hard to see. I would say that 5 foot is probably like that minimum range that you're going to want to fish in. When you're using forward-facing sonar, any shallower than that, pictures can get blurry. Turning them horizontal into perspective mode, which is a whole nother thing, becomes more beneficial. It's hard to see the fish as much, but you can really just see the cover you're attacking. But we're going to talk about using it over deep water and the ways that I would approach that. So in deep clear reservoirs in the wintertime, we'll say starting in January through March, when the water is still cold, below 55 degrees, those fish are very nomadic and they are going to spend their time chasing bait out over deep water. You have a section of the water column that's going to be the most comfortable for them to suspend in, and the bait seems to stay in that water zone the same, and they get out over deep drains, and the best way to approach them is going to be with some kind of shad imitating style bait, whether it be a soft plastic or it be some type of hard bait, which is also a treble hooked bait. My personal favorite is to catch them on a minnow style soft bait. The reason being, it is very easy to throw right to the fish when you see them, and you have a single hook bait, your land percentages go way up. But the first one that I really like is a Berkeley flat nose minnow. It's going to be a small shad imitating style bait. The biggest thing you need to understand is what size the forage is. So if you're fishing in a place that has a lot of large bait, large gizzard shad, just larger thread fins, and you can see them with your eyes, you can see them on your forward-facing sonar, and you know that they're bigger, I'm going to want to go with a bigger profile style bait. This is a flat nose jerk shad. It's max scent by Berkeley. And then, like I said, if you're in a place where the bait is smaller, this is a smaller bait. It's 4-inch, just a smaller profile, and you're going to want to match the hatch. That's something that's never changed whether you could see the fish or not. So the easiest way to rig this is I just have a jig head. This one is an 1/8 ounce. The smaller the bait, the lighter the weight you can get away with because you have less drag through the water. And I'm just going to rig this simply on a jig head. Make sure it's really straight. You don't want the bait to be spiraling through the water column. When it's falling, you want it to have a very natural presentation. So once you get it on there, you're going to want to select a jig head. This one has a 2-aught in it. Like I said, it's an 1/8 ounce. You're going to want something that's going to allow the bait to still have a lot of freedom on the end. You don't want a really big, oversized hook, but you also want to get away with as big a hook as you can, because obviously we're all out here to catch as large a fish as you can. So having a hook with some bite in it, something that's going to penetrate the hard mouth of a 6, 7, 8 pounder during the winter time, because that time of the year their mouths are really hard. So I've come to find that something with a 2 or a 3/0 hook is great, and that's the way I'm gonna rig that. And this is gonna be no different. This is the 5-inch jerk shad. It's gonna definitely be a bigger profile, and I'm gonna do the exact same thing with it. I like to run the point of the hook into the bait until you get to the bend, and then to make it so you know what distance you need, I like to pinch it right here where it's straight across from where it's gonna bottom out at, and that'll tell me how far to push the bait up on, come out the center, and straighten her out. And there you go. So the deal with this technique is gonna be, you're gonna get out over deep drains, timber, and when I say deep, it could be 10 foot, it could be all the way out to 50 foot. That's really irrelevant. You're gonna be looking for bait. And when you find the one that is full of bait, whether it's just wind driven, it's just day by day. Some days, you know, they'll be in one drain, some days they'll be in another, but you're gonna have to read the situation, read the day, and find the bait. Once you have found the bait, it's gonna be an obvious cloud on your forward facing sonar, and you will actually see the fish suspended under them or inside the bait. It's really awesome. In the summertime, you know, everybody's seen fish schooling where they're busting on the surface. Well, in the wintertime, they do that under the water. So once you've located a place that you've seen some fish, you're literally going to just throw this bait and get it as close to them as you can. And what I have learned is that the bait ball's always doing the same thing. They try to stay together. It helps them survive. Well, your bait's always going the wrong direction, so it really makes him an obvious target to the bass. So if you can just get it out there and get it close, a lot of times you're gonna, you know, catch the fish when they're in a feeding frenzy. But the biggest thing is just to always swim the minnow above them. You know, they're feeding up, you just want to swim the minnow above them, and he's gonna come up and get it. The biggest thing, like I said, is just understanding what your forage is gonna look like and picking a bait that is gonna match the hatch. So this is also a time of year that you can use the treble hook style baits, a hard bait, and 2 of them that I have here is going to be a Berkeley Stunna jerk bait and a new bait that we designed strictly around forward facing sonar, and it's called a Berkeley Credge. And so essentially they really have very similar bodies but different bills, and the reason for that is this one's going to dive down and this one's going to run upwards. So that's a situation where if fish are very active and aggressive and are wanting to chase things to the surface, I'm gonna throw this one out there, and it has a shimmy fall and it falls really quick. So if I see the fish, I'm gonna throw and let the bait fall to him, and once I know he's seen it, the fish will turn, come towards the bait, I'll start working it, and the bait works towards the surface. And it literally just has a left and right. It's a, you know, a fleeing bait fish action to it. And they're gonna come up and try to catch it before they get to the surface, because naturally fish want to pin their target to whatever, whether it be the bottom, whether they chase it to the bottom or they chase it to the surface or against a wall or a log or whatever. Fish like to trap their prey, and so that's why this bait does so well running to the surface. You get a day where fish are not really aggressive, it's cold, conditions are terrible, they're highly pressured, whatever that situation is, that's when I'm gonna go to a jerk bait. And so in really clear water situations, fish can see a long ways. A jerk bait's going to suspend. You can even weight it by changing the hooks or adding suspend strips, you know, a whole list of things. But you're gonna want a jerk bait that's going to suspend. And you're gonna throw it out past the fish, try to work the bait down to a depth close enough to where he can see it. And once the fish sees it, that jerk bait will just suspend in the water column. And nothing sits perfectly still in the water. Everything's always moving just a little bit, so your hooks are just slightly moving, the bait's drifting a little bit up or down, or just the drag of the line through the water is gonna make it slowly move. So it looks like a dying bait fish or an injured bait fish. And it allows those fish to get up there on it, and it just sits there forever. And having the ability to see the fish and how it's reacting with the bait is what makes a jerkbait so deadly with forward-facing sonar, because you can literally just leave it out there with him forever, and if he starts to get off of it, you give it a twitch, which will, you know, make the bait jerk and go one way or the other, and he'll get right back on it. And you can really read the fish and extend your cast for a long amount of time. And though, as the old saying goes, curiosity kills the cat. Eventually that fish is going to come up, and sometimes all they'll do is just come up and nip one of the hooks, but with a good rod and, you know, good sharp Fusion 19 hooks, you're going to land the fish. So it's all about just getting the bite, and sometimes a jerkbait is going to be your best friend. If I had to pick one bait to only use with forward-facing sonar, it's going to be a jerkbait, because you can work it faster, you can work it slow. I personally like to just work it when it's, you know, it's a slow, it's a hard bite, it's something that I'm really having to make these fish commit to. But you can use it in any scenario as long as you can get it to the depth where the fish are going to see it. So we're going to fast forward now into directly before the spawn, into post spawn, all the way through summertime. And at that point, the fish really become territorial. So when they're pre-spawn, females are going to get up in the water column and they're going to get real high. And what happens is they're up there sunning to warm their eggs up before they go to spawn. When you're on a deep, clear reservoir, some fish will spawn down the bank where you can see them with your eyes, but we've come to learn a lot of them spawn out deeper on objects that are 6, 8, 10 foot deep, where you can't see them with your eyes, but you can see them with the forward facing. And then when they get post spawn, you'll have fish that are guarding fry, so on and so forth. And then all the way through the summer months, they just tend to get deeper and deeper where you can see them. And at that point, I'm going to go to a worm. This one is a Berkley Max Scent. It's a Magnum hit worm. And I also like to use a Berkley Max Scent General. And I'll rig both these up for you and show you a couple different ways. But the deal with the worm is, for years and years and years, we've caught bass on a worm. It's probably the most productive bait to getting a bass bite. And when they are in that protective mode where they have a zone that they are, you know, either guarding for a bed or they're just out there in space, warming up their eggs, they seem to be protective of an area. You can put this worm right out there on them, and you can use different weights to get it to them quicker or allow it to stay in that area where you want it right in front of them. And to be honest with you, worms are cheap and they're really easy to rig, and if you lose one, it's not a big deal. Some hard baits can tend to get, these aren't, but some people will throw glide baits and all kind of things like that. They get a little bit expensive, and that's just not my taste. So all you'll need to rig a worm for forward-facing sonar fishing, they're all going to be wacky rigged. You can use two different deals. One is going to be just your traditional O-ring style holder. I don't like to just hook the worm right through the bait. I mean the hook right through the worm. You have too much plastic around the hook, in my opinion. So I like to use a O-ring or some style of holder to run the hook through. And the first one we're gonna do, we'll do a Magnum hit worm. I'm gonna use an O-ring on it. And I actually just got done having a top 5 finish at Lake Fork in a Bassmaster Elite Series, and I caught every fish I weighed on this exact technique. So I like to take my pliers. They make fancy O-ring tools, but I like to take my pliers. I just put my O-ring right around the end of it like that, and then stretch it out. And then you run your worm through the O-ring, pull it to the center. Every worm will have a little, what they call a sac area. It's a slick part. It's kind of the thickest part of the worm, and that's really where they design for you to put an O-ring or to hook it if you're going to wacky style. Put your O-ring there, and then I just use simple nail weights. Buy these off Amazon. They're not expensive at all. I do suggest using a tungsten weight. When you're using lead, it really stretches the weight way on down the worm, and it doesn't want to fall as straight and as quick. So I like to use a tungsten weight, and all you're going to do is just insert that straight into the end. Just like so, and you're going to hide it into the end of the bait, and that's going to allow that bait to fall really straight. And then once you work it and you're pulling the bait, I'll show you the hooked one. When you work the bait and you're pulling it, it's going to fold on both ends, but having that weight in the end is going to allow it to fall really straight. So you throw it straight on your target, and you know the fish is 60 foot out, floating or on a stump, whatever the case may be. You're going to throw it straight out there on the fish, and then I really like to read how they act, whether they want to chase it to the bottom that day, or if you need to start working it in the water column. That's a very day-by-day thing, but sometimes they still like to feed up off the bottom. If you're fishing out really deep, so the fish is not 5 foot deep, but over 30, a lot of times they're going to want to stay up in the water column because it's warm. When you're only 10 foot deep and the fish is, when you're only over 10 foot of water, but the fish is 5 foot deep, a lot of times they'll take it all the way to the bottom, and that's where they want to pin it at. The other worm that I'm using here is a Berkeley General stick bait style worm. It's been around for a long time. This one's probably a little better for a beginner because it has a little more weight to it naturally. So it's easier to cast. It just works easier, the whole 9 yards. The hit worm's a little bit lighter. You really need to have your setup dialed to be able to cast it. The stick bait is very easy to cast. The cool little deal that I like to do, that I also like to do, I was gonna show you, is I go to Dollar General. If you buy the O-rings, they're $5 for a pack of 10, but you can go to Dollar General and buy just regular old black hair bands, and you can get 500 of them for like $1.50. And I just wrap them up around the end of my pliers here, spread it out. Same deal, stick your worm through, and you have a perfect O-ring there. I'm bad about running out of O-rings or forgetting and leaving the bag laying out, blowing out of the boat, whatever. So I have stashes and stashes and stashes of just regular rubber bands to use that too. And the purpose of that is just to show you that you don't have to have a lot of really expensive stuff, to be able to do this. But with the worms, it's going to be the same, you're going to work them the same way. But that's going to be something, like I said, that's going to be utilized through the spawn all the way through the summertime. And the deal with fish that we've learned when you're fishing for them out off the bank is the roles really just reverse. Once fall comes back around, the fish start getting more bait oriented again, and you're going to transition back into using hard baits or minnow style baits. So that's just keeping it really simple. Like I said, you can throw tons of different stuff. You can get as expensive as you want to with it, or you can keep it as simple as you want to. But no matter where I go in the country, these are going to be the few things I'm going to keep with me that I'm always going to have tied on when I know that I'm going to be utilizing forward-facing sonar. So I'm going to get up here, look around on the screen, see if we can see a fish. I'm going to try to identify what I feel like is maybe bluegill, maybe what's a bass, and I'm going to see if I can throw a hit worm to him and get him to bite. When using your forward-facing sonar, one thing that I'm going to suggest is to really pick a range that you're comfortable with. Learn how far you can cast, and that's where I'm going to set my range to. I like to run mine at 100 foot for today's purposes, to get it really tight, be able to try to get a good image of my bait. I'm going to run it at 50 foot, but the beautiful thing of it, especially when it's synced in with Hummingbird's 360, is you can see here we have a hard ditch creek channel that's running through. We have a brush pile out here. It looks like it has a lot of fish in it. I'm going to say those are going to be crappie or bluegill. We have this hard ditch right here, and that's going to allow me to put my power poles down and just scope around. Like, there's a lot going on right here, and so you can see that the fish are really utilizing out in this general area. I don't know if there's a turn or something. I'm not as familiar with this lake, but we have a lot of different targets here. And what I was saying earlier about making a lot of casts and throwing at everything to help you learn, with my range this tight, it's gonna make the fish look a little bit different than what I'm personally used to. And so we're gonna just start by throwing at this close one. You can see my bait falling right here. And of course he went out of the screen, but as I'm holding it tight, it'll slow that bait down, but you can see you're getting a live picture of the bait falling. This fish obviously saw whatever it was, you know, saw my bait falling because he got interested in it. But right here we have a stump and we have a fish holding tight to it. Let's see if we can get one of them to bite. They're so close to the boat right here is one problem we got. You see my bait going down, and you saw how fast that fish reacted to the bait. Like, he darted off the screen and come back. That's definitely gonna tell me that's some kind of panfish. A bass really will hold right in that zone. Like when he sees something, he is the alpha predator in most lakes. He's not gonna really run from the bait. So you can see my bait's falling right here. Let's see how they react to it. Okay, so this one did not really, you know, make a quick spin around to look at it. He just held right in that zone and then started sinking to the bottom real slow. That's gonna tell me that's probably gonna be a bass. I didn't throw it as close as I would like to have, so we're gonna reel it in because he has rode back up. We're gonna make another cast to him and see how he reacts to that. This is gonna be the part of using forward-facing sonar efficiently. Some days it is better to just make blind cast and fish around, but when you're really wanting to break something down quickly, this is where forward-facing sonar is going to shine, because I know I didn't make a good cast. I'm going to reel it in, throw it straight back out there. I throw it out and the fish doesn't react how I think he should. He doesn't react like he's going to bite. You can see this one chasing it to the bottom right here. He's not reacting the way I think he should, or he's not telling me that I think he's going to bite. That is where I'm going to reel in, pick another fish on the screen if you have a lot, if you're fortunate enough to have a lot of targets like that, and see how he's going to react. So none of these are really giving me any kind of warm and fuzzies that they are probably bass, and so I'm going to keep on moving around the bank and see if we can find a large obvious target that's definitely a bass and capture it. All right, so something we got right here, when you're having to throw back behind the boat, behind your position where it's gonna be hard to make that cast, I can see here visually that there's a tree in the water. And so I'm gonna turn my trolling motor until I can see the tree, and I'm gonna turn it back to the left or right, whatever, but the fish that I was wanting to look at was back to the left of this hard return of that tree. So I know then where to make my cast. So if you have visuals in the water column, sticking out of the water, it is nice to use that to be able to make the perfect cast, or hit the fish. If he's at an angle, it's going to be really difficult to line up with your trolling motor head. Okay, so we have a group of fish right here. We're going to let our bait fall, see how they react to it. This one started chasing after it, and he got it. Oh, missed him. Probably a little one. Talking about floating, you can see here, you see this fish right here is only about 3 foot deep, over about 14. That is, what you're going to see in the early months, right before they start spawning. Let's see if I can hit the fish. He's swimming left to right. I don't feel like I've gotten that one to see it yet. Let's throw to his friend. Okay, you can see this one's now chasing my bait towards the bottom. I'm gonna just kind of keep letting it fall. The way these are, pushing off the bait and spinning around really makes me question if they're bass or not. That's just a good example there of what I was talking about earlier. You're going to bluegill, crappie, other types of fish will be interested in your bait, so they're going to chase it. You just don't want to get hung up on saying, okay, well, it's probably a bass because it chased it. There's everything in the water column will chase your bait. You just have to really learn and watch how the fish reacted to it when you actually got the bite. So you see how everything out there is, interested in it, watching it, but nothing is, completely committing to the bait. Get back over here off the wall. Here's another good hard return. So, and another thing that forward-facing sonar does is it allows you to really learn what your lake looks like on the bottom, So, and that's how that's done. We can see that little bass holding just off this little high spot that the cypress tree is growing on. Threw the Berkeley Magnum hitworm over there to him. Watched him fall it to the bottom, and I knew just to keep shaking the bait and giving it action. And we caught us a little largemouth. So, I hope these tips have helped. If forward-facing sonar is something that you're looking to get into, or maybe you've used it a little bit and you didn't really understand, didn't know where to start, I hope that some of these tips helped you and will allow you to go out and enjoy your time on the water using forward-facing sonar.